defendant, Mr. Ashley White, following his conviction for the charges of driving with excess alcohol and dangerous driving. Before I proceed, madam, can I assume that you have had a chance to read the pre-sentence report?
Yes, I've read it.
Very well, thank you. The first thing I would like to say as counsel for the defendant is that I agree that the charges of driving with excess alcohol and dangerous driving are very serious offenses, and I do not wish for the court to think that we do not take this into consideration today. With that being said, I do crave the indulgence of the court by requesting that the defendant is shown some measure of leniency when a sentence is imposed on him today. I do not make this request without having some basis for it, and in this regard, I would like to make two submissions and then my recommendations as it regards sentencing.
Yes.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Thank you. My first submission has to do with the defendant himself.
Yeah.
The first thing I would like to say is that there was never any intention on the part of the defendant on the night in question to be driving. It was always his intention to spend the night at Chatsworth Park so that he could continue the activities of the following day. It was only because there was some noise in the area where he had chosen to stay why he was even driving in the first place. So I wish to state that very clearly for the court. I also wish to state that Mr. White has accepted full responsibility for his actions. He has expressed in an interview with Mr. Brown that he bitterly regrets his conduct on the night in question. I refer you to the pre-sentence report, madam,
Yes.
under the heading Offense Analysis, paragraph 7 of that report.
Yeah.
He readily admits that the course of action which he took when he drove off from the frontiersmen was because he was fearful, because he had consumed a lot of alcohol. It was not, and I repeat, not because he had predetermined that he was going to disregard these gentlemen. Also, Mr. White has expressed remorse for his actions, which he displayed at Chatsworth Park. And in Mr. Brown's assessment as to whether or not he's likely to commit the offense again, he has indicated that he's unlikely to do so. I refer your attention also to the heading Offender Assessment, paragraph 5.
Yes.
Madam, the defendant has complied with the bail condition which was imposed on him when he was convicted. He has been in regular contact with his solicitor, and he is present in court today as stipulated. Madam, I posit that all of these things taken together speak to the character of the defendant and his understanding of responsibility. To reinforce that point, I refer you to paragraphs 1 and 3 of the report titled Offender Assessment.
Yeah.
It was suggested that Mr. White has always operated within the confines of the law. In fact, he holds the position of safety officer in his gun club, and I think that the court will agree that in order for someone to hold a position of that caliber, that person must not only be responsible, but seen to be responsible by others. Regarding my second submission, it has to do with Mr. White's commission of the offense on the night in question.
Yes.
We've already acknowledged the seriousness of the offenses, but it is submitted that the manner in which he committed those offenses fall within a low degree of harm. During trial, it was made quite clear that he did not injure anyone, that no property, including vehicles, were damaged when he was driving, and also his driving was not prolonged. He made a conscious decision to park his car shortly after he was spotted by the frontiersmen. Madam, I do not ignore that there were factors which indicate that Mr. White had a higher level of culpability. In fact, the major factor, which was evidence of alcohol, was readily acknowledged by Mr. White. He did not waste the court's time when he was charged with that offense, and he readily pled guilty to that offense. He has admitted that he was fearful on the night, which was why he didn't stop when he was confronted by the frontiersmen. Madam, I cannot stress enough that Mr. White is a young man who on the night in question made a mistake, or what you perceive as an error in judgment. And it was something that the probation officer, Mr. White, has concluded that he's unlikely to do again in the future. In terms of sentencing, I respectfully request that the court take the following into consideration. I request that a fine not be imposed on Mr. White, as his earnings are very low. He earns only £195 per week, and he has recurring expenses, and so he will suffer great financial loss if he has to pay a fine. In concurrence of the recommendation of Mr. Brown at the section titled Proposal, I also request that instead of a custodial sentence, that he be given a community order for 200 unpaid hours for 12 months. Undoubtedly, madam, this will have the same effect of imprisonment in that his liberty will be curtailed, but most importantly, he will have an opportunity to engage in community-based activities. Thirdly, I also recommend to the court that Mr. White be given an opportunity to attend a rehabilitation course. I make this request in light of the fact that he has expressed a willingness to submit to a period of rehabilitation, and I've taken his age into consideration, as well as the fact that he has no previous convictions for this or any other offense. And also, this is a segue into my final request, which has to do with the question of disqualification of his license. Now, due to the nature of these offenses, disqualification is mandatory. However, if he were to be part of an approved rehabilitation course, it will go towards reducing the length of the disqualification period. And this will be particularly helpful to Mr. White, because it was mentioned in paragraph 3 of the pre-sentence report under the section Offender Assessment that his employer wants to retain his services, but he may not be able to do so if he doesn't have a driving license. Madam, if you have no questions for me, here ends my submission on behalf of the defendants.
No, thank you very much. I just want to confirm that last bit.
Sorry?
I just want to confirm the last point that you were making.
Uh-huh.